On This Week in Enterprise Tech, we have Mr. Curtis Franklin and Mr. Brian Chee here today. Now, inclusion has definitely been a challenge for people and organizations, and it may have gotten harder with hybrid work. We're going to have a great discussion about that. Plus, organizations are finding it challenging to provision environments and optimize their costs, especially in the Kubernetes world. Today, we have Laurent Gil. He's co-founder of Cast.ai, and we're going to talk about how organizations can report their costs, scale and optimize using AI to ensure they get return on their investment. You definitely shouldn't miss it. TWiET on the set.
Podcasts you love
from people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is TWiET, This Week in Enterprise Tech, episode 496, recorded June 3rd, 2022, Cloud Tetris. This episode of This Week in Enterprise Tech is brought to you by Compiler, an original podcast from Red Hat discussing tech topics big, small, and strange. Listen to Compiler on Apple Podcasts or anywhere you listen to your podcasts. And by Linode. Get the cloud support experience you deserve with Linode. No tiers, no handoffs. Get $100 in credit. Visit linode.com/TWiET. And by Nuvei. Say goodbye to abandoned carts, poor approval rates, and high chargebacks with Nuvei, the platform fast forwarding to the next generation of payments. Turn payments into powerful accelerators for your business at nuvei.com. Welcome to TWiET, This Week in Enterprise Tech, the show that is dedicated to you, the enterprise professional, the IT pro, and that geek who just wants to know how this world is connected. I'm your host, Louis Maresca, your guide through this big world of the enterprise. But I can't guide you by myself. I need to bring in the professionals, the experts, starting with senior analyst at Omdia and our security enterprise expert. He is Mr. Curtis Franklin. Curtis, great to see you, my friend. You're soon to be the happy traveler, right?
I am beginning to pack. I head out in just a couple of days. Going to San Francisco for the Rsa Conference. I've got a full dance card out there. Looking forward to actually being out in the real world. It should be an interesting time. I can't say that I'm truly looking forward to being on an airplane all that much time, but we'll see how that goes as well. One way or the other, though, I'm going to be learning a lot about the latest stuff in cybersecurity, talking to a lot of folks, and looking forward to telling people about it when I'm back here on TWiET next week.
Fantastic. Well, definitely looking forward to the coverage, Curtis. Thanks so much for being here. Well, I also want to welcome back our network expert and all-around tech geek. He's Mr. Brian Chee. Cheebert, how are you, my friend? What's keeping you busy?
We're doing great. We did a fast trip to Costco to go pick up some stock up on some supplies because hurricane season is starting, and we have one of the first storms of the Gulf coming up. But I actually got a really interesting email today from a friend of a friend asking about this new Department of Defense acronym, STAG. Don't know what it stands for, but apparently it is the latest in the next generation in security audits for cybersecurity, but she's having trouble with Mac OS X. So basically, it's 100 steps in an audit process. And if you miss one, you have to drop down to a command line, change it, and then start over. Wow. So she was asking, is there a way to do this faster and easier because it's chewing up all my time? And I said, well, I helped build one with DISA back in the NISPOM days for civilian classified work. And so I went and harassed my buddy, and we're going to see if there's some scripts that have been written to make this less onerous process. We shall see. But boy, oh boy, I don't miss this part of my old job in the classified world. Boy, it stinks. I hate it.
I bet. Well, thanks, Cheeber, for being back. Well, we might have to have a show about that, because that sounds like an interesting topic for us to cover, actually. A lot of organizations have to run through that, so we'll have to definitely see. Well, speaking of the show, we have lots to talk about today. Hybrid work has obviously complicated corporate America, and it's obviously workplaces are already very complex, and inclusion is actually a challenge in a lot of them. We're going to talk about today just how hybrid work has actually made that worse. Now, organizations find it challenging to provision environments and optimize those costs for them, especially in the Kubernetes world. Today, we have Laurent Gil. He's co-founder of Cast.ai, and we're going to talk about organizations and how they can report those costs, scale, and optimize them to ensure they get the return on the investment that they expect. So definitely stick around. Lots to talk about there. But first, we have lots going on in the enterprise world. So let's go ahead and jump into this week's news blips. Now, as we approach DEF CON and Black Hat, we're starting to hear a trend of new exploits in the wild. Now, this week, it's exposed MySQL servers to the internet and that they're invulnerable to attacks. Now, Shadow Server researchers actually found 2.3 million IPv4 and 1.3 million IPv6 addresses to respond to external requests on the default port of 3306. Now, that means that those servers are wide open to attacks, and out of those 3.6 million servers, most of them are actually from the US. That's right, 740,000 of them are. China actually has 296,000, and Poland has 207,000 of those. Now, the first thing to do if you want to actually protect your organization, you have MySQL actually exposed to the to the internet. You can now also add your IP to an allow list, or all the IPs that need to connect to it, to an allow list, to make sure that you actually can control who can connect to it. Now, the next thing you want to do, the most important thing, is actually change the default port from 3306. And if you're doing those things, you actually can cut down your attack vectors by almost 90%. Now, lastly, only allow access or root access through local hosts. And this way you can make sure you can cover most of the other attack vectors as well. Now, all these things bring up a great point. You should make sure that you're auditing your exposed services. Make sure you have a tech bill of materials, and you have to also ensure that what you're exposing to the internet, make sure you know who has access to it.
Well, in an announcement that will surprise approximately no one, phishing isn't just for email anymore. Two popular global messaging apps, Telegraph and WhatsApp, have been the platforms for recent phishing campaigns that can give the attackers more than just the credentials for an email account. Last week, Rahul Sasi, founder and CEO of CloudSec, warned that WhatsApp users were receiving messages telling them to call a number with a 67 or 405 prefix. Trouble is, dialing those digits forwards a victim's calls to a number controlled by the threat actors, triggering a script that gives the attackers complete control of the victim's device. Another cybersecurity firm, Inky, has identified attacks on the Telegraph platform that look to harvest Microsoft 365 credentials and run cryptocurrency scams. Now, Telegraph has become one of the more popular platforms for cyber attacks because of a couple of key characteristics. It allows users to set up web pages without registration, and Telegram, the host platform, deletes sent messages after they're read, helping attackers to carry out their scams anonymously. These two attacks are reminders that there's no such thing as a safe platform on the internet. The same qualities that make systems popular with consumers and freedom-minded individuals can make them effective tools in cybercrime attacks.
Well, a big thank you to the folks at Dark Reading for this particular article, because it's one of those about time things. Well, Consumer Reports is apparently launching an IoT cybersecurity nutrition label. Anyway, they announced that it will expand its advocacy work to help people protect themselves from cyber attacks, thanks to a $5 million grant from Craig Newmark Philanthropies. The new initiative will scale up its capacity to evaluate a range of cyber threats, including phishing, ransomware, and other malware, as well as how to protect online services and endpoints, such as Internet of Things devices and mobile products, from being compromised. The imperative to educate consumers on how to choose the most secure solution is urgent, the group said in its announcement. The new Consumer Reports cybersecurity initiative will include an experimental, quote, nutrition label, unquote, to help shoppers understand the various product security and data collection practices, in addition to free digital tools and the expansion of its existing security planner to include personal cybersecurity, according to the organization. Well, quote, Today, we know that consumers are increasingly vulnerable to cyber threats, and the tools to secure our data are often complicated or they don't even work, according to Marta Talado, DR president and CEO, in an announcement of the new effort to push consumer cybersecurity awareness. This new initiative will help us educate people so they can better protect themselves and stand up to demand that industry and government do better. Well, it's a terrific step in the right direction to help identify the junk on the market, currently labeled as, quote, advanced cybersecurity appliances, unquote. We need a bigger step to do the same thing for enterprise-grade gear. I proposed it decades ago as a firewall buyer's guide at InfoWorld when Curt and I were still there. But sadly, the marketing folks didn't agree with us and wouldn't sponsor it. Darn.
Now, we all heard about Tesla's employee email that Elon sent where he treated them like the principal of an elementary school. But either way, lots of work sites are supposed to pack their bags and leave if they can't work a full 40-hour week on site. Well, this has had a ripple effect through the industry. In fact, Tesla's plant in Germany has responded back to the ultimatum. In fact, the IG Metall union that operates in Tesla's German plant opposes the demand of at least 40 hours a week on site. The site employs about 4,000 people, looking to expand to 12,000 people. Now, the union responded saying that anyone who doesn't agree with the demands will have the full support of the union by law. Now, in Germany, there are currently no laws with the right to work from home, but the labor ministry is working on policies that would increase flexibility for its workforce. Now, many large employees or employers, include automakers, have already embraced hybrid working models in the wake of the coronavirus pandemic, which forced companies to send staff home to work. In fact, the interesting thing here is Mercedes sides with the unions. That's right. Now, according to Musk, quote, there are, of course, companies that don't require this, but when was the last time they shipped a great product? Now, it's been a while. Well, we've seen how, quote, other companies respond, and we'll have to see how others respond in the coming months. But it might be an eye-opener that electric cars are not the only great product in the world being shipped by flexible and very advanced tech companies. Well, folks, that does it for the blips. Next up, we have the bites. But before we get to the bites, we do have to thank a really great sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and that's Compiler, an original podcast from Red Hat, discussing tech topics, big, small, and strange. Compiler comes to you from the makers of Command Line Heroes, another of our sponsors, and is hosted by Angela Andrews and Brent Simoneau. Now, technology can be big, bold, bizarre, and complicated. Compiler unravels industry topics, trends, and the things you've always wanted to know about tech through interviews with the people who know it best. Now, on their show, you will hear a chorus of perspectives from a diverse communities behind the code. Compiler brings together a curious team of Red Hatters to tackle big questions in tech, like what is technical debt? What are tech hiring managers actually looking for? And do you have to know how to code to get started in open source? Now, episode 2 covers what can video games teach us about edge computing. Now, the internet is a patchwork of international agreements and varying infrastructures, but there's something coming to change the ways we connect. In this episode of Compiler, hosts explore what edge computing could mean for people who enjoy video games and what this form of entertainment can teach us about technology. Episode 9, how are tech hubs changing traditionally? If someone wanted a career in tech, they had to move to, tech hubs, a city packed with startups and talent. But things are starting to change. The hosts of Compiler speak to a few of the change makers who are thinking outside the physical social dimensions we've come to associate with innovation. Now, I actually really enjoyed the edge computing episode. They did a really amazing job distilling down what edge computing is and how it impacts the industry and just how practical applications make it seem more accessible. So definitely worth a listen. Now, learn more about Compiler at red.ht/twit. New episodes are out now. Go and download anytime. Be sure to check back for new shows. Listen to Compiler on Apple Podcasts or anywhere you listen to podcasts. We'll also include a link on today's episode show page. We thank Compiler for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Well, folks, it's now time for the bites. Now, we well know that remote work and hybrid work has definitely complicated the industry. In fact, it's sent a ripple effect through the workforce out there. But one thing that's been around for a while that the hybrid workforce has actually complicated is inclusion. Definitely getting harder and making it more challenging. What's going on there, Chee?
All right. So this is a story that came out of Protocol, and it is from a former New York Times editor named Alan Henry. It's about his new book, Seen, Heard, and Paid. And it talks about inclusion. So I'm going to read a little bit of the intro of the article just because it's so well written. Alan Henry has spent over 20 years writing about technology and productivity hacks for places like Lifehacker, the New York Times, and Wired. But as a black man, he realized he couldn't life hack his way out of being overlooked and excluded at work. So he wrote a guide to help others wade through office politics, get diploma assignments, and achieve their career goals. Henry's new book, Seen, Heard, and Paid, The New Work Rules for the Marginalized, which is out June 7th, so just in a few days, is partly a blunt critique of modern corporate America and how it's failed so many working people, and partly a guide to navigating this failed system to achieve some semblance of workplace success, even if your workplace isn't set up for you to succeed. Now, this is actually kind of appropriate for me. Being Asian, I was marginalized a little bit, especially in the Department of Defense. However, the marginalization that I got hit with wasn't bad in private sector, wasn't really bad in the Department of Defense, but it was horrible in the academic world. And it wasn't because I was Asian. Nobody cared about that. The good thing about living and growing up in Hawaii is the population there tends to be very colorblind. We just didn't care. However, in academia, because I was a staff member and I didn't have a PhD after my name, I was a second or even a third class citizen because even new professors were treated better than the staff. So I'm just going to go through. This is a spectacular article. I really encourage you to read it carefully in its entirety, and I would encourage you to go to our show notes. But I'm going to read a few of the highlights from it. Out of his book, he says, I encourage people to look around and see who's doing the office housework, who's doing the glamour work, and try to disrupt those systems. So it's kind of interesting. He's got a lot of really great things to be said, and we have these layers that he's talking about. So one of the layers he's talking about is, I almost wholeheartedly refute the idea that a marginalized person has a responsibility to make a place better for other marginalized people because we're almost never empowered to do it. Something to think about. Well, here's another one. How do you balance the responsibility you might feel to stay and make your workplace better for other people who might come after you with your own sanity and self-care? Another one is a core tenet of productivity is that productivity is not about getting more stuff done so that you can just do more stuff. It's about getting things you have to get done so you can focus and put your energy towards the things that matter to you. I like that. So let's get into the guts. The bottom line is the workplace really should be color, gender, race, etc., blind. It's not supposed to care. I kind of like having employee review documents not list any of that. A lot of times they've stopped listing gender and so forth. I think it should go and do your reviews based on an employee number. So you don't even have the cues of a name to go by. It seems like a lot of hoops to jump through, but when you start getting all these giant articles, lawsuits and so forth, like what happened at Google and what's happened at Amazon and other large corporations all over the world, there's just too much marginalization. And like Lou said, now that we've had this pandemic and people are out of the workplace, at least for now, in some ways marginalization didn't happen, depending on who you talk to. Sometimes it's gotten even worse. really needs to be looked at on a case-by-case basis. Just the fact that we have an adage like women need to work twice as hard as men to get ahead. That's in Japanese, we call that shibai. You can insert whatever you want. But the reality is we've got some real problems in our workplace, and it needs to be dealt with. I'm going to do one more shot, and then we're going to open it up to the other hosts. Some of you remember a couple of decades ago, there was a case in Honolulu at Xerox Corporation where a disgruntled employee went in and shot 7 workers. I knew all those workers really well. I also knew the person that did the shooting. And my comment about that is that particular person was really and truly passive aggressive. He hated the world, and he basically said bleh, 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 all kinds of stuff. But Xerox, in their ultimate wisdom, moved human resources to the San Francisco regional office. And so now there was nobody to whisper to at the water cooler. And I'm not going to say it would have prevented it. I'm not going to say it would have encouraged it. I'm just going to say that when mechanisms for dealing with marginalization aren't there anymore, you have escalation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw this to Curt first. While this is not really a technology standpoint, it is there in technology. I've certainly seen it, especially when you have a lot of engineers being brought in on visas. Those engineers certainly do get marginalized. Sometimes it goes down to, well, the value of the person making the opinion is in direct response to the distance they had to travel. So it ought to be interesting. Curt, what kinds of marginalization have you seen in, especially American industry? And do you think we're doing better, or are we backsliding?
The doing better or backsliding is tricky, because I think you can say that in many ways we are demonstrably doing better. I have been in business for a while, and things have changed fairly dramatically since I got my start in the industry. I saw things at early computer industry conferences that would absolutely not be acceptable today. Why? Because at the time, the industry was probably 90 to 95% male, and pretty much white male, and therefore there were a lot of things that happened that were not offensive to most white males, but were to pretty much anyone with a brain. Now, the question really is, what do we do about 2 classes of things? One is structural. You hear a lot about structural racism. And it's real. And the key thing about that is that it's not any individual being a racist. It's about the way systems are set up to be comfortable for the people who set up the systems, or people like that. And let's face it, in many, many cases, none of us who are currently around set up the systems, but people kind of me, did set up a bunch of them. And so it matters. You have to think about these things, and not just because it's the right thing to do or woke or whatever you want to use. I think in many cases there are demonstrable business benefits to having a diversity of viewpoints and a diversity of ways of thinking in the room. Now, this is especially true when it comes to things like cybersecurity, because so many of our cybersecurity attack vectors can be traced back to a meeting from the first attack at which sometime the words, "We never imagined someone would do X." And the greater the extent to which everyone who's looking at the problem has the same experience, the same education, the same view of the world, the more likely it is that you're going to have large swaths of things that are unimaginable. Having more diversity in the room when looking at problems, looking at issues, means that it's harder for those little unexpected things to hide out and not be imagined. Now, I've got to say, I came very close to filling the privilege bingo card. But I do recognize that there are a lot of people who have different experience, different histories, different backgrounds than me who bring critical things to the table. And I have had the chance to work in the industry long enough to be able to take advantage of some of those diverse viewpoints. Now, the fact that those diverse viewpoints often come wrapped in people who look different than me, we'll call that a side benefit. That's gravy. But diversity is a solid business benefit aside from everything else.
Well, that I like that view, but Lou, you work at a big corporation that is at. My best description for it is it's a melting pot. Just about every walk of life, every race, every creed, every whatever is represented there. But you've worked places other than Microsoft. What kinds of things have you been seeing as you've made your way from small companies to a large white-owned company like Anheuser-Busch to Microsoft? How different has life become?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I think it's definitely different on smaller organizations that are, whether they're technology or not, they tend to go towards the standard business that they've had before. And so they try to follow standard business practices and whether it's, how they conduct meetings or how they conduct business or whatnot. And that's not always inclusive. Like it's not usually conducive to making money and be productive for them, but it's not being inclusive. And they don't realize that if they were to expand and have a diverse team and ensure inclusion, that they can do better. And they can, so I've seen that a lot with the smaller organizations. In Anheuser-Busch, it's interesting because, again, I worked in the brewery and in a bunch of technology, in a big technology group. And I feel like, that was a very inclusive environment because, we had women and, we had lots of different people from different cultures, and we all were very effective at our jobs and easy to communicate. And at the end of the day, we were all rewarded well for the work that we did. So I think that was actually a really great environment. If we kind of fast forward to Microsoft, like you said, it is a melting pot. There are a lot of challenges in the company, and the company's trying to do better at a lot of things it's doing. And I can definitely tell you, in our group, we're trying hard to make sure that. We already have a diverse set of teams, but I think that, the teams in general are trying to do better at inclusion. Like I said in the beginning, a hybrid workforce has made this a lot more challenging because, it doesn't really matter. People of all cultures, and men and women are being, going remote. And that means that, it's making it even more challenging to ensure inclusion, whether it's, in engineering and design work or meetings or business decisions. And I think there's lots of work to try to develop methods to make sure that that's better. And I think, part of it is just making sure that leaders are more cognizant of that fact that they need to ensure inclusion with their teams and that they drive that culture with their teams. And I think that's where things are starting to shift for sure.
All great concepts. I'm going to throw one more thing out. And this was when I was being pushed up against the wall by PhDs and was marginalized for decades. One of my tricks, and for those of you that are finding yourselves pushed against the wall, is keep a diary. The work diary needs to be something where you can't just tear the pages out, sewn in pages, a composition notebook, a laboratory notebook, and write in ink. While it is no longer fully accepted without question by the courts, a diary that has notes. I used to log all my phone calls, inbound and outbound. I used to summarize my meetings. If I got crapped on by a PhD, I would record that. And I finally managed to get a boss that was willing to listen to me. And we actually did some work and looked at opinions and found out a particular professor was directly responsible for chasing away 32 ocean engineers that we had worked with. And every single one of them listed down that they absolutely hated this particular PhD, and actually wrote down and listed all the verbal abuse this person did because their opinion was the only one that mattered. So for those people that are working in academia, please be aware you've created a stratified environment where the PhDs rule, even though a lot of PhDs don't have any experience managing. I used to have to teach the PhD candidates how to do advanced networking because they didn't know how to do it, but yet they were going for a PhD in computer science. So marginalization comes in many different colors, many different flavors. Take a good hard look. Have your organization created any kind of stratification? Because if you have, and it's beyond just who is the manager and so forth, you might want to take a good hard look and do some introspection, because marginalization is a very, very big deal in the IT industry or just working in America. And I, for one, would love to have people listening just take a good hard look inside your organization and say, can we do better? Because the workforce is changing. Many people are saying, I'm not willing to go back to what it used to be. And if we want to proceed further as a nation, we're going to have to learn how to work better together. And I think this is a step in the right direction. But you know what? I think it's time for us to hear about one of the sponsors for TWiET, and I'm going to throw it back to Mr. Lou.
Indeed. Thank you, Brian. Well, next up is our guest to drop some knowledge on the TWiET Riot, but we do have to thank another great sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and that's Linode. With Linode, you get 100% human-free telephone support available worldwide 24/7, 365. Linode's award-winning support team is a highly trained team of service professionals dedicated to finding solutions while providing an unparalleled customer experience. Say no to bad customer service and experience the Linode difference. If you haven't chosen Linode yet, you might be asking yourself, why choose Linode? Well, you'll get a support experience above the rest. People choose Linode because they demand a better customer support experience. Linode's independence and mission drive them to a different standard where the customer is the driving force behind everything they do. They have pay-as-you-go, predictable, and transparent pricing. In fact, Linode pioneered the predictable flat pricing model for cloud computing. No more anxiety over hidden costs. They make it simple to launch and scale in the cloud because with Linode, you get flat pricing across every global data center, an intuitive cloud manager, a full-featured API, best-in-class documentation, and award-winning support. That means that Linode makes it easy to manage your applications in the cloud. Not only that, but Linode has a proven secure and reliable enterprise-grade infrastructure. And with their extensive peering relationships and their next-generation network, Linode delivers the modern infrastructure and performance you need to innovate at scale. Now, I found with Linode that they're a one-stop shop, so you don't have to look anywhere else. Whatever you want to do, you can host your website and build your app, store or back up your media. Plus, you can easily launch and enrich your developer applications, hosted services, websites, AI and machine learning workloads, gaming services, or CI/CD environments, and you can launch and scale in the cloud with their virtual machines. You can even choose shared and dedicated compute instances, or you can use your $100 in credit on an S3 compatible object storage, managed Kubernetes, and much more. There are a lot of cloud providers out there that don't make it easy to be productive, and some of them have dashboards coming out their ears. Not with Linode. I actually found them really easy to use. In fact, Linode was rated the easiest to use by G2 Crowd in 2021. That's why cloud developers choose Linode, because they make managing complex infrastructure easy with simple bundled pricing, full-featured API, and 100% human support. Linode helped pioneer cloud computing back in 2003, 3 years before AWS, so they have the longevity you know can be trusted. Get the cloud support experience you deserve with Linode. No tiers, no handoffs. Get $100 in credit. Visit linode.com/TWiET. That's linode.com/TWiET. And we thank Linode for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Well, folks, it's now time to bring in the guests, drop some knowledge on the TWiET riot. Today, we welcome to the show Mr. Laurent Gil. He's co-founder of Cast.ai. Welcome to the show, Laurent.
Thank you. Very nice to have me here.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. Thank you for being here. Now, we have a diverse audience, and a lot of them love to hear people's origin stories. Now, before we get to today's topic, can you take us through your journey through tech and what brought you to Cast.ai?
Yeah, sure. That's a long story. So I'm a software engineer by training. I started my first job in Japan, where I was working for an investment bank in the training floor. It's a mathematical thing. It's a lot of math and risk management. Then I did the same in New York. Then I did the same in Brazil. Then I lived 2 years in West Africa, in Nigeria. Went back to Paris, met one of my co-founders that became one of my best friend, Yuri Freeman, and we had an idea that there was a very interesting group of scientists in the Ukraine that was doing some very cool techniques in computational photography. The next day, I was in Kiev, in Ukraine, and we started a company called Vudo that was doing computational photography. So the idea at the time was, hey, if I point the camera of my phone into someone, can I recognize that person? Can I do face recognition? Can I do object detection? Can I do this on a mobile device? And can I do this in real time? It took us 5 years to do this. We were using machine learning techniques, but at the time, this ML thing was not the thing yet. Like, there was no AI. This word didn't exist or was not very, very popular. So we were trying to explain, the machine is learning some problems. And then when the machine learns the problem, the machine is able to make a decision. And we apply that to make more beautiful pictures, because if you know who is in the picture, then you can focus on that person. Right. So we did this for 5 years, got acquired by Google. That was in 2012. Fantastic ride. And then with the same co-founder, 2 years after that, we thought, now AI is a thing. We could use these techniques for cybersecurity. It's the same problem. You have a lot of data and you need to identify attacks within a mass amount of information. Company was called Zanedge. We started the company in Lithuania, in Vilnius. This is where I am right now. At the time, we had about 10 people. We ended up being acquired by Oracle in 2018. We had a fantastic ride. We were protecting the largest sport event, the largest stock exchange in continental Europe at the time was protected by us. We were protecting APIs, e-commerce. Those are really, really a lot of interesting things that we saw. But there was one thing that we never did very well. And we were never able to understand how much and why we were spending so much on the cloud. We, start the company, we spend a few $1,000s a month. That's normal. You have 10 people. That's expected. That was on the AWS. We exited the company. That number became $2 million. We never understood the reason for it. Like, we never understood the cost of goods sold. We never knew what was our marginal cost to other clients. Business was fine, was fantastic. We had a blast with protecting our customers, but the expense side of things was very frustrating for us. And so after the acquisition by Oracle, 2 years after the acquisition by Oracle, my co-founders and I, the same guys, we were free again, and we thought, let's build this product that we wish we had at the time, a product that would be able to understand and control and recommend and automate cost management on the cloud. That's 2 years ago, and that was Cast AI.
It's a great story.
That's the story.
Now, you brought up the big problem out there. Engineers, they know how to build things and solve really tough challenges, but they don't really know how to ensure a company doesn't overspend. Now, what kinds of things are you seeing? You've already talked about some, but what kinds of things are you seeing in the industry overall?
So there are some very interesting stats there. We have about a few thousand applications under management. So we have a lot of statistical analysis on what engineers, software developers, DevOps deploy and do on the cloud provider. One of the most surprising statistic that we found is, I'll give you the raw data, is about a third, it's a bit more than a third, 30%, 37% of your cloud cost are for things that you absolutely do not use. It's not like you use sometimes. You do not use it at all. 0%. That's about a third of your cloud bill. That's an average. For some companies, a bit more, and for others, it's a bit less. But yeah, there are a lot of statistics like this that says, you use a cloud and you have to pay for all these machines that are in your account. Whether you use them or not, you have to pay for them. And in fact, you don't use a little bit more than a third of these on average. So there's a lot of statistics like this that we found.
Now, that's interesting. I mean, the third of things that you don't use that you pay for, is this just because cloud providers are bundling things and people don't configure them and use them? Do you have other examples of this? Like maybe it's scaling or something?
Yeah. So I'll tell you why. So in this world that we analyze, these are for containerized applications. So you can replace the word container by cloud native. So imagine any application that is cloud native use some containerized technology, so your application is broken down into containers. Good thing with containers and why we love them is because they scale very well. You see, imagine you're a consumer app, and right now it's 8 a.m. in your local time. People are waking up, they are coming to your app, so your traffic is going up. Your need for compute is increasing, and the good thing with containers is we add them up. So we add a container. If the container has no machine to run on, we add a machine on which the container works. It's like a Tetris game. We have a lot of containers come in, and the key here is you need to assemble the boxes in neat lines, right? The Tetris game. And with no empty space within your machine, a lot of time there are a lot of empty spaces. And that's the stat I was giving you earlier. There are 37% empty space in these machines. The machines are all used, but they are used at 65% of the time. And the rest is the empty space. You're paying for it, but you don't use it. That's the stat. That's one of the reasons for these issues.
It's amazing. Now, I'm interested in actually how your technology works. I've actually talked to companies like Aptio who pride themselves as being an ERP for IT organizations. They go in and they do a bunch of scanning and pulling in a lot of the costs that you're applying, and try to make sense out of it. And then they also give you some insights into where you're paying and what you're paying for and that kind of thing. What kind of technology are you using? How are you actually cataloging these things and providing insights to organizations where they're spending and where they're not using, that kind of thing?
Yeah. And this is where AI is coming from. Aptio is a fantastic company. They have a great product called Cloudability. That product is a reporting product. So it tells you how much you spend and why, and give you some form of recommendation. The big difference here is we don't recommend, we reduce. And that's what we do at Cast.ai. We analyze very quickly what an app does. We look at how many machines it uses. We look at how many machines it should use. The difference is your waste. and then we automatically reduce your infrastructure so it fits exactly your utilization, nothing less and nothing more. So that's part of the secret. There are other things that we do. For example, there are 600 different machines on Amazon, 600 different shapes. Which one do you choose? This is where AI is useful. Do you take an M5? It's a type of computer on AWS. Do you take a C5? Oh, there is also a C5A. A means AMD. So it's a compute machine. It's a server that has an AMD processor. Which one do you take? Are they the same price? Absolutely not. The AMD one is slightly cheaper than the Intel version. But is it the same performance? I don't know. You see, the human cannot comprehend this thing. It's just the problem is so big that there's no way you can select the best machine available for you. 10% of your bill can be reduced by selecting the right machine, but the human can't do that. And then another 20% of your bill can be used by using highly discounted machine that all the cloud providers provide. And if you add all of these things, you find out that on average, 65% of your cost for containerized applications, so for compute, on any of the three main cloud provider can be saved. And if you think of this a little bit more, 65% means on average, a company will spend or does spend 3 times more than they need for their containerized application. With a combination of these 3 things.
It's amazing. It's amazing stats. I mean, it's true that organizations, they don't know exactly what they need because they don't know how much traffic at any point in time they're going to have or what load there is or how many times they hit their back end. Like, so there needs to be a lot of data collection and a lot of insights generated off of it. So this is really awesome. We have a lot more to talk about, but before we get to all of that, we do have to thank another great sponsor of This Week in Enterprise Tech, and that's Nuvei, tomorrow's payment platform designed to accelerate your business. Now, is your payment provider holding your business back? Well, Nuvei's next generation payment technology not only boosts conversions, reduces fraud, and increases approval rates, but works seamlessly with your existing tech stack. Now, you can connect to Nuvei's platform via a single API integration. Now, with Nuvei's agile platform, your business will also be allowed to add new payment methods, enter more markets, and meet evolving customer demands so you can stay ahead of the curve. Now, Nuvei offers more than 550 alternative payment methods, including cryptocurrencies, with local payment solutions around the world in 150 currencies. Nuvei offers local acquiring in 46 countries in more than 200 global markets. Customers also benefit from all payout options and card issuing, banking, and fraud management services. Nuvei can handle any high-demand peak event. Their always-on approach ensures 99.999% uptime. They offer flexible a la carte solutions that are tailored to your needs. Nuvei is the payment partner for some of the world's leading global brands, including Wix, Valve, DraftKings, General Motors, Valentino, Crypto.com, and many more. With future-proof technology and dedicated team of 24/7, 365 human support professionals, Nuvei prepares your business for whatever comes next. Say goodbye to abandoned carts, poor approval rates, and high chargebacks with Nuvei, the platform fast-forwarding to the next generation of payments. Turn payments into powerful accelerators for your business at Nuvei.com. That's Nuvei.com. Nuvei, tomorrow's payment platform. And we thank Nuvei for their support of This Week in Enterprise Tech. Well, folks, we've been talking with Laurent Gil, co-founder of Cast.ai, and we're talking about just how organizations spend more than they should on cloud providers, cloud support, cloud environments. You know, it's really interesting. I want to bring my co-host back in because this is an interesting topic that we don't necessarily talk a lot about. We talk about organizations using technology and using containers and using cloud services to provide it, but we never talk about just how much they are spending and why they're spending it. It's a really interesting topic, but I do want to bring my co-host back, and I want to bring in Curtis first. Curtis?
Thanks very much. Laurent, one of the things that I have talked to a lot of organizations about is this idea of shadow IT, that cloud services are so inexpensive, or can be so inexpensive, that you have business units going out and contracting for cloud services. How much do you think this kind of activity contributes to the overall overspending on cloud services from the organization side?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. It is, so I can tell you on what we do, it is not the reason for having all these machines there but not used. And I'll explain to you one in a second. On the shadow IT, so what we found sometimes, it's rare, I have to say, is, the developer created that machine in staging most of the time. Production, they tend to be very careful with. But on staging, it's easy to do it. You make a test, you test it, you forget about it. That happens to me also. Whenever I do a demo, I always forget to turn it off. And, a week later, I still have these 6 servers working on AWS sometimes. And then I'm in trouble when it happens. I think that's probably one of the reasons why, but it's not why 37% is not used. It is not used because it's very hard to use them. That's the reason why it's the case. It is extremely difficult to right-size an application. So think about this. You're a developer and you say, I need to deploy these things and I need 10 machines. How do you know you need 10 machines? And who is telling you this? Nobody. The application is not in production yet, so you don't know the load you'll have. Once the application is in production, the only thing DevOps is interested in is this app must work, because you know what? If it stops working, I'm in trouble. The job of DevOps is to ensure that the app works and it works well. So their interest most of the time is to make sure you have enough compute, not the other way around. And so that's where this percentage of unused machine come from. It is very, very hard to estimate in advance what it is that you need. And us as human, we tend to over-provision because we will be in trouble if the app doesn't work. You see, so that's more that side of what we experience with organizations that use us.
Well, I think that's a really good point. The difficulty in right-sizing the application, and in fairness, that's something we saw when people were running applications on mainframes, when people were doing all sorts of leased or CPU-based pricing for things. This was a complaint back then as well. But you mentioned DevOps, and there are things like containers. I mean, you have Docker, you have Kubernetes, you have all the container technologies. From where you sit, do you think that the move to containers, assuming it really does happen on production environment, is going to make it easier to correctly judge the size of the environment that you need, or do you think it adds more complication to the process of figuring out the proper environment size for the application?
Yeah, it's much more difficult. And think of this, I'll tell you why. Imagine this app have about 10 containers. Each of them are like a kind of microservice that have something in input, crunch the number, give something in output. Each of these 10 things, you have to size them. You see, before we do a monolithic application that says it works on this machine. You look at how many CPU it uses and you can size it. Here, you have to do that work for each of them, for the 10 type of workload you have. So I think that's part of the complexity. This is where AI is fantastic, because then the machine can do this, the human cannot do this, but the machine can. So the container is a little bit responsible for that state of mind. But the incredible benefit of using containers and Kubernetes is so great that developers and DevOps will still want to use cloud native techniques such as Kubernetes. And we see a lot of these, in production. I mean, we see applications that have 150,000 CPUs. I mean, just mind-blowing how big these things are. So yeah, it's being used in production, in staging. It's extremely hard to size because you have to size each little small boxes. That's what the human cannot do it. That's where you need to use some modern techniques like AI or machine learning.
Well, that just kind of blows your mind. The analogy of Tetris, where there's only 7 different shapes. Now those shapes can be different sizes. Trying to get it all to fit together is just mind-blowing. So one of the questions that came out of the chat room from Mr. Gumby, he's asking, does your system envelop lambdas, aka serverless processes as well, or just full-blown VMs?
It does handle Kubernetes containers. In fact, what we do, a Lambda is a fantastic thing, fantastic technology. Function is the open source version of Lambdas, serverless technologies. Serverless technology is very similar to container, except you don't need to manage the VM. It's serverless, so it will run on a VM, but you don't need to manage it. Someone else is doing it for you. It's exactly the same that we do for containers, for Kubernetes. We make Kubernetes autonomous in the sense of we make containers autonomous in the sense that the developer is using our techniques. We're not the only one. There are a few others like this. But with our techniques, you deploy your containers, but you don't need to worry anymore where they run, in what machine, how much they cost. Do you need 1, 2, 3, 2,000? Do you need one right now, but 200 in 5 minutes? You don't need to worry about this anymore. We make this completely autonomous by taking the management of these machines out of the equation. So you manage your containers, you don't need to manage the machine it runs on, because suddenly you have a friend in your team. It's an AI engine that is going to optimize this for you on your behalf 24 hours a day with an obsession for efficiency. That's what it means. So it's very similar, if you think about this, if you take this at the extreme, very, very similar to have serverless function.
Cool. Hey, I wonder if you can fulfill one of my great wishes. A lot of science fiction starts talking about how, I might have a process, but I can shop it around to different cloud services. So is your system going to allow us to work across a hybrid environment? And can I actually shift these things around between cloud vendors yet?
Yeah, so when I show these to customers, I say, I'm going to show you some science fiction, exactly for what you said. So we have run applications across 2 cloud providers. So the application is installed in machines. Some of these machines happen to be owned by Amazon. Others are owned by Google. They are connected over a secure VPN. They are in the same geographical region, so they are within 5 milliseconds of each other, which means they sit in the same network like any other machines. They don't even know that they are on 2 different cloud providers. What is incredible here is with this thing, with a multi-cloud application, you can do price arbitrage. So think about this.
Nice.
In the Kubernetes world, you say, I need a new 8-core machine. That's what the AI engine will say. And then we turn around and say, hey, Amazon, how much is it? And then we look at Google and say, hey, Google, what's your cheapest one? And it's going to take the first one in the list in real time, all the time. And that thing is working.
Nice.
It works.
Science fiction today.
We have it. Yeah. This use case is something you have to see it to believe it. A lot of organizations say, well done, but wait a minute. I'm not authorized to use another cloud provider. I can only use one of them. And you are telling me that if I use 2 of them, I have another 30% price arbitrage. You see, that's the science fiction part, right? You have to tell the organization, yeah, you can do that. It works.
Okay. Well, that's really powerful, but from a security standpoint, that kind of gives me the heebie-jeebies, shall we say. What kinds of security audit or security standards could we expect to be able to use? If I'm doing medical stuff, can you guys comply with HIPAA regulations?
Yeah, it's a really good question too. These kind of systems act as your DevOps employee. We don't know what the app does, but we know it uses that amount of compute, that amount of memory distributed in a number of compute locations. You don't know what it does. Imagine it's the same as, I'm running a database. The database runs really well, but I don't know what is inside. That's exactly the same analogy. There is no data that is being transmitted to the AI engine because the AI engine only knows what we call the metadata, which is, I have a number of containers, these are their names, this is the amount of CPU and memory they use, these are the machines they currently sit in, this is the cost of these machines, and that's it. So the other thing that you still think about is this app runs on the cloud. It's the cloud security. Frankly, there was this debate, do I trust cloud security? Do I trust my own? Do I trust my own data center? Do I trust the cloud? The history shows the cloud is a lot more secure most of the time compared to what you have at home. Just because AWS has an army of chief security officer, and the same for Google, and the same for Azure, and the same for Oracle, and for all the others. So the cloud is a lot more secure than on-prem, that's for sure. If you connect the cloud by a secure VPN, it's extremely secure. If you use an engine that has no access to your data, but is able to optimize them, then there is no security issue from that standpoint. So there's a lot of guardrails like this that you can use. The fact that you're on the cloud already say or shows that you are using or you're protected by this great product that the cloud providers have built in.
Laurent, time flies when you're having fun. Thank you so much for spending time with us for a really, really interesting topic. Lots to talk about there. Now, we're running low on time, but before we close up, we do want to give you a chance to tell the folks at home where they can learn more about Cast AI and maybe where they can get started.
Oh, sorry. Oh, where they can get? Yes, sure. We actually have a free product. It's free cost reporting and recommendation engine. You can use it as long as you want for as many apps you want. Just go to cast.ai and click on free trial or sign up. Here you go on the list. It's completely free. It's free forever. You use it, you deploy your app, you look at the cost, and then there is a button on the top right that says activate. This is when your costs go down. Yeah, for that you have to be a customer. We have a product for startups, for medium size, for enterprise. Usually the product pays by itself. Almost all the time, the return of investment is between 5 and 10, just because we reduce your cost so much that you end up, spending 1 and making 10 is kind of the average.
Fantastic.
That's how it works.
Thanks again for being here. Well, folks, you've done it again. You've sat through another hour of the best paying enterprise and IT podcast in the universe. So definitely tune your podcatcher to TWiET. I want to thank everyone who makes this show possible, especially to the co-hosts, starting with our very own Mr. Curtis Franklin. Curtis, what's going on for you in the coming week? And where can people find you and all your work?
Well, the big thing coming up for me in the coming week is the Rsa Conference. I'll be heading over there Sunday, back later in the week. Like I said, I will be here in time for next week's TWiET, but in between now and then, I'll be tweeting a lot. I'll be meeting a lot of people. I will be doing a couple of LinkedIn Lives talking about what I'm seeing and hearing at the conference. So follow me on Twitter at KG4GWA. Follow me on LinkedIn. You can follow me on Facebook, all kinds of places. I'm just all over the place on social media. I hope you'll look me up. And if you have any questions, hit me up with a direct message on any of those services.
Thank you, Curtis. Thanks for being here. Well, you also have to thank our very own Mr. Brian Chee. Cheebert, what's going on for you in the coming week, and where can people find you and get a hold of you?
Actually, I'm going to be tearing my home office apart because I need to go and make better use of space. And in my closet, the previous owner, for some reason or another, put a power plug in the closet. So I'm going to be putting my UPS, actually going to be putting a relay rack in, so I can put my baby servers and all my PoE switches. And I'm finally going to finish physically separating all my IoT gear from the regular wireless. And I'm going to start running some more physical cables because I want to go and add more cameras around the house. Sadly, I've been watching next door and seeing all the reports of people getting their cars broken into or so forth and so on. It's like, oh, the world needs to heal itself. There's some bad things happening. I'm going to make my house as undesirable a target as possible. So if you want to hear my ranting about, darn, I don't want to have to crawl over air conditioning ducts, so I'm going to use an old clothesline pulley system in my attic so that I just have to go and clip my cables onto the pulley system and run it across the house and lessen the chance of me sticking a fat foot through my ceiling. But if you want to hear about that, Twitter is a great place to go, and I'm ADVNETLAB, Advanced Net Lab, on Twitter. You're also more than welcome to throw me an email. I'm Cheebert, spelled CheeBert, @twit.tv, or you're welcome to also throw an email at TWiET @twit.tv, and that'll hit all the hosts. And you'll also be able to go and listen to me ranting about building portable desks. Back in World War I, there's a concept, just a little wooden case. You could flip it open and it gives you a writing surface and had places for the officer to go and do their forms and correspondence and so forth. And I'm thinking about modernizing that for things like soldering stations and electronics diagnostics, and making that available to possibly the Boys and Girls Clubs of Florida. Ought to be fun, and I'm going to be tweeting all about it.
Fantastic. Thanks again, Cheebert. Well, folks, we also thank you as well. You're the person who drops in each and every week to watch and listen to our show and get our enterprise goodness. We want to make it easy for you to watch and listen, catch up on enterprise and IT news. So go to our show page right now. That's twit.tv/TWiET. Easy URL there. There you'll find all the amazing back episodes, the show notes, the co-host information, the guest information, and the links to the stories that we do during the show. But more importantly, next to those videos there, you'll get to helpful subscribe and download links. Support the show by getting your audio version or your video version of your choice. Listen on any one of your devices or any one of your podcast applications, because we're on all of them. So definitely subscribe and support the show. Now, you may have also heard we also have Club TWiT. That's right. It's a members-only ad-free podcast service with a bonus TWiT Plus feed that you can't get anywhere else, and it's only $7 a month. And there are a lot of great things that come with this Club TWiT. In fact, one of them is the exclusive access to the members-only Discord channel. You get chat with the hosts, the producers, separate discussion channels, plus they even have special events on there. So definitely check that out. Lots of fun discussions. Join Club TWiT and be part of that movement. Go to twit.tv/Club TWiT. Now, Club TWiT now offers group corporate plans as well. That's right. It's a great way to give your team access to an ad-free tech podcasts out there, all those. The plans start with 5 members at a discounted rate of $6 each per month, and you can add as many seats as you like. It's really a great way for your IT department, developers, tech team, sales team, stay up to date with access to all of our podcasts. And just like regular memberships, they can join the TWiT Discord server and get the TWiT Plus bonus feed as well. So definitely go to twit.tv/Club TWiT. Now, after you subscribe, impress your friends, your family members, your coworkers with giving them the gift of TWiET. Let them know about it. We talk about a lot of fun tech topics on this show, and I guarantee they'll find it fun and interesting as well. Definitely share TWiET with them. Now, if you've already subscribed and you're available on Friday, 1:30 p.m. Pacific time, we do this show live. That's right. Come see how the pizza's made, how the show is run, the behind the scenes, all the banter. Just go to live.twit.tv. All the stream options are on there, live.twit.tv. And plus, if you're going to watch the show live, you might as well jump into our chat room live as well, the IRC channel. We have irc.twit.tv at the TWiT Live channel there. We love our chat room. We have great discussions in there during and after the show. Plus, we have a great place to give feedback. So definitely check it out. Be part of that movement. Be part of the chat room as well as part of the live stream. Now, definitely hit me up on twitter.com/LouMM. There I post all my enterprise tidbits. Direct message me for show ideas, whatever. Plus, I usually have great conversations with people, so definitely hit me up there. And if you want to know what I do during my normal work week at Microsoft, please go to developers.microsoft.com/office. There we post all the latest and greatest ways for you to customize your Office experience, make it more productive for you, whether it's using C#, JavaScript, even the old VBA model. So definitely check that out and make your Office more productive for you. I want to thank everyone who makes this show possible, especially to Leo and Lisa. They continue to support This Week in Enterprise Tech each and every week, and we couldn't do the show without them. So thank you, Leo and Lisa, for all your support. Also, I want to thank all the engineers and staff at TWiT. We couldn't do the show without them. And also, I want to thank Mr. Brian Chee one more time. He's not only our tireless co-host, but he's also our tireless producer as well. That's right. He does all the bookings and the plannings for the show, and we really couldn't do the show without him. Thank you, Cheebert, for all your support. Now, before we sign out, we also have to thank our editor for today, Mr. Anthony. He makes us look good after the fact, but also our TD for today as well. He's our talented Mr. Ant Pruitt, and he does a fabulous show called Hands On Photography. And it's great to have you back. What's going on this week in Hands On Photography?
Well, sir, thanks for checking out the show and thanks for the shout out. This time on Hands On Photography, I'll talk about frequency separation, which is a retouching technique to help make you folks look almost as good as me and Mr. Curt. So if you want to throw your photos in there and do some frequency separation to look good, go check out the episode.
Absolutely. Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Well, until next time, I'm Louis Maresca, just reminding you, if you want to know what's going on in the enterprise, just keep TWiET.
Hey, I'm Rod Pyle, editor of Ad Astra Magazine, and each week I'm joined by Tarek Malik, the editor-in-chief over at Space.com, in our new This Week in Space podcast. Every Friday, Tarek and I take a deep dive into the stories that define the new space age. What's NASA up to? When will Americans once again set foot on the moon? And how about those samples from the Perseverance rover? When are those coming home? What the heck has Elon Musk done now? In addition to all the latest and greatest in space exploration, we'll take an occasional look at bits of spaceflight history that you probably never heard of, and all with an eye towards having a good time along the way. Check us out on your favorite podcatcher.